This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street. Really quick up top, of course, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. On our Facebook, there's another forum where we like to daily interact with our listeners, post funny stories, memes, all that sort of stuff. It's called Citizens of the Milky Way. You can find it in our Facebook page. Just find it, click the Let Me In button, and one of us will let you in. Everyone's welcome.
Yes, please join the squad.
And of course, if one episode a week is just not enough.
And it's not. It's just not. You need more, and that's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yes.
This is what I mean. I don't want anyone to feel shamed or tootish or fartish because they need more content. That's
Absolutely.
Okay. We have a solution. We have the extra content. Dylan, talk about it.
We do. If you go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast, you can find 3 different tiers each with their own goodies, all for you.
Yes.
Please check that out. At the end of the show, starting now, I'm going to give our shout out to our top tier Patreon subscribers. But
we gotta save the best for last.
That's right. But you know what? I got to give them something.
Please.
I have a special one-time shout-out
yes.
to a new Patreon subscriber.
Yes.
Let's give it up to the president of Pain, Samantha Permain.
Woohoo! Welcome to the Creep Street Homeowners Association.
Welcome, Samantha. Enjoy those goodies. We are so happy to have you here. Mm-hmm. Now, Maureen, this was a weird one this week.
This is a very weird one. This is actually, if we, to give you a little insight into what we're doing, this is actually take 2.
Yes.
We recorded this whole episode, and then we kind of thought about it, and we were like, this case is so weird, let's just do it again. Let's make sure we get all of this weird info out.
Because I was literally getting confused as we were recording it. It's bizarre. It's a bizarre story. It's an incredible story.
Yes.
But we wanted to make sure we delivered it as coherently as possible, because this is, it's bizarre.
Yes, this is a story, a possibly unsolved murder or just mysterious death, we're not sure exactly, that happened in the 1980s. And there have been a couple of books written on the subject.
Yes.
There are 3 that I could really find, 3 good ones. However, all of them are either between $200 and $300.
Right, because they're all out of print.
Yes. I checked the closest library where it is, and the closest one is in Madison, Wisconsin, and we don't have time for that.
Yeah.
We love Wisconsin, but we can't be driving up all the gosh darn way to Madison.
That's right.
It's just, so anyway, these books are hard to get. There are a lot of great sources online, a lot of great articles, YouTube videos, things like that, which have been extremely helpful. But the fact that the more kind of primary sources, the books, those are few and far between.
Yeah.
And so it's like the information is a little muddied about this.
Yes.
And that is available to the wider public.
That was the other thing why we decided to re-record. So many of the sources, the information varies wildly, or
or it's rearranged in how it happened.
Right. Or it's like not totally different. It's just like little things are different. And we will do our best to, like kind of point out when we're like, okay, this is a little bit here that we found in one source but nowhere else, so we're not totally sure. And then we'll point out spots where we're like, this, was consistent through all the sources.
Right.
Like this stuff seems like a good, firm, hard, thick fact.
Exactly.
Today, our story is called Something Follows Cindy James.
Ooh.
And it seems like something was following her.
Yeah.
What that means, I don't know. As I mentioned before, we have some great sources today.
Yes.
One source that we love and talk about in this show a lot is just the great classic show of Unsolved Mysteries.
Absolutely.
So they did a segment on that show about it, which is great. So another great source was unsolved.com, which is Unsolved Mysteries website. So that is another one that was helpful. Also an article from medium.com called The Bizarre Murder That Officials Claim Was Suicide by Edie Hockenberry. Also the Reddit thread about Unsolved Mysteries, and a great YouTube page called Bedtime Stories did an episode on Cindy James as well. Those are our main sources for this week. Now, one of the co-creators of Unsolved Mysteries, Terry Dunn Muir, he said that this was one of the top 10 creepiest cases ever on the show.
Absolutely.
And, this show had over, like 1,300 segments.
Yeah.
And this is, according to the co-creator, it's up there. It's weird.
It's unsettling.
It's very unsettling.
Every time you think you know where it's going,
you don't.
It takes a left turn, and it completely flips everything on its head.
So, our story today mainly takes place in the suburb of Vancouver, British Columbia called Richmond. Our star of today's episode is, of course, Cindy James. She was the eldest of 6 kids and was born in Ontario, Canada in 1944. Her father was stationed there as an army officer, and because he was in the army, the family had to move around a lot.
Right.
With her growing up. So this part, what I just said there, is true. What I'm about to say here, I'm not exactly sure. It could be true, it could not be true, I don't know. It seems potentially her parents kind of encouraged her to not make any kind of social connections with friends at school.
Really? Like when she was younger?
That. Yes. Just kind of, it seems like because, she was moving so much, maybe they were trying to save her from, being sad and missing friends when they had to move again.
Right,
I don't know. Also, they said that maybe her dad was very extreme disciplinarian, so that was kind of hard for her to grow up in that environment.
Right.
Don't know if that's true or not, because also in the Unsolved Mysteries episode, her parents are interviewed, and it seems like she did have a close relationship with her family. And of course, families are always complicated, and you can feel all kinds of way about your family all at the same time.
Right.
So who knows exactly? But in 1962, her family was relocating to France for her father's job, but she was 18, so she decided to stay in Canada, and she began nursing school, and that's where she lived. She lived, on campus. But she would go visit her family in the summers in France. So she met her husband, Dr. Roy Makepeace, in 1965. He was a doctor, a psychiatrist actually, which will come up a lot later in the episode. One source said that he began tutoring her, and then a romantic relationship started, or maybe they just met and that a romantic relationship started. This is one of the things where it's not totally clear.
Before the story really kicks off is where a lot of stuff is really different.
I mean, most of the sources honestly don't even talk about her life before this stuff starts happening.
Exactly. And I think it's important that we do, because I think
Right.
it just helps fill out the picture more.
Right. And even, the stuff that's before these incidences that are happening that we'll talk about is a little bit more loose goose and not as nailed down, but the bones are there.
The bones. Right.
But what we do know about her husband, Dr. Roy Makepeace, is that he definitely was 18 years her senior, and they got married when she was 19 years old.
So you can do a little math there.
Yeah, a little
See the
math.
discrepancy.
Yeah, so it's a little, that's just a touch. I know some people say love doesn't know a number or age is just a number. And I'm sure in some ways that can be true.
Right.
However, I do find it odd that a grown ass, nearly 40-year-old man is out here wanting. How could you actually want to be, I mean, I know she's fuckable to be crass about it. But it's
in terms
why,
of, an actual connection.
yeah, it's why would you,
What would you have in common?
in my opinion, I'm that just kind of sounds boring for
Exactly,
everyone.
for everyone
But
involved.
maybe I'm a prude, Maybe they were in love, who fucking knows, but that happened.
Yeah.
Now, they never had kids of their own, but Cindy worked a lot with children as a nurse. She really did well helping children with behavioral and emotional disorders or problems. But at the time when our main meat of the story happens, she was working as an administrator for a preschool.
Right.
So I just think that is worth mentioning that they never had kids because this is one of those things where it's who cares that they didn't have kids?
Right,
It doesn't
exactly.
mean anything. I think it's mentioned more in the sources that I read and everything, and also in the original newspaper clippings and stuff, because
Right.
it just was more unusual at the time for a woman that was married to not have kids or whatever.
Right,
So
right.
we have no idea why they didn't have kids. It could have been
Right.
because they just didn't want to, or maybe one of them couldn't, or what,
Right.
what it's
Exactly.
It doesn't really matter, but it's I just think it's worth bringing up just,
Right.
in case it sets off a light bulb in your mind about something. And-
Exactly. Because this is still the 60s, right? When they meet?
Yes, they get married in December of 1966.
Okay, so we're still in this. Okay.
Yes. So Roy was already married and had children. And so he got divorced from his first wife in 1966.
Okay.
And then December of 66, Cindy and Roy got married.
Maybe that's why. Maybe he was I already got kids.
Exactly. Maybe he's I've done that part of my life. And maybe she was I'm out here helping kids all goddamn day.
Right.
So, I kind of I'm getting the best of both worlds here. Maybe that's why. Now, their marriage, this is one of those things that we don't really have firm information.
Right.
A lot of the sources just don't say anything at all really about their marriage. Some have said, though, that after they got married, Roy received an angry letter from Cindy's mother saying that Roy was taking advantage of her and all these things. But Roy later realized that actually Cindy wrote the letter herself. And he just kind of wrote it off, thinking she was just being melodramatic. Which is weird. It's if you thought your wife was doing that, wouldn't you want to ask some follow-up questions?
Also, melodramatic. That goes beyond melodramatic.
Well, it's just what is she doing? It's I don't even, it's this is what the past, no one asked any questions in the past, is what I have realized. And it's you just need to ask your wife, why did you do that?
Right.
And it's also was said that near the end of their marriage, spoiler alert, they're gonna get divorced. Cindy was saying that Roy was really angry and abusive towards her.
You're right.
Roy said that he was not abusive towards her at all. He said that he slapped her 2 times.
Right.
So, I mean, that is,
It's abuse, but
what he is saying is
Right.
that he was not abusing her. He slapped her twice out of frustration.
Right. And
we
we'll
could unpack
dive
that
into
for
what all
literally
this
hours.
is.
but
Exactly. We're not excusing that, but we're saying what she was claiming it was
Yeah.
far more violent.
So at the end of the day, they're clearly saying very different things.
thing.
And in 1982, she filed for divorce from Roy after 16 years of marriage. And she moved out and she moved into her own home. And this was the first time in her whole life she's ever lived alone.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
Good. Yeah, that's
It's interesting to
because
think
she was
about.
probably a student when she met.
Right.
So she was probably living with roommates or whatever when she's going to nursing school. Yeah, you're right. This is probably the first time
Right.
she's been on her own.
Right.
She went right from her parents to
college,
to marriage.
Being married, yeah. I've never technically lived alone. I've always had roommates. It's different when it's not your spouse or your boyfriend or,
Right.
So yeah, this was a big deal. And about 4 months later, after the divorce, some very, very strange activity began around Cindy James.
Here we go.
And this is the beginning of about 7-year-long saga where Cindy called the police at least 100 times.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Use that as your belt buckle. You're strapping in. Right now we're going up, tick, tick, tick. We're going up that first hill of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
When you're doing that tick, 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 and you just hear that clicking and you're thinking, why the fuck did I do this? Tick,
You're
tick,
thinking,
tick, tick,
you're kind of
tick, tick,
screaming.
tick. Yep, and that's where we are right now.
It all began with some phone calls. Cindy started receiving mysterious phone calls where there was just silence on the other end of the phone. Not like the phone was dead, not like the ringing.
Like there was clearly someone on the line who wasn't talking.
Yes. Sometimes she could even hear breathing on the other end.
Damn.
Sometimes the person on the other end of the phone would talk to her. They would threaten her. They would repeatedly use her name to let them know that they know specifically who she is.
Right, it's not just teens prank calling.
Exactly.
Is your refrigerator running? It's not that shit.
Which we love. I love a good prank call. This, unfortunately, was a f***ed up call.
Right.
She said there was even a time where she was at home and she felt like she was being watched and she closed her curtains. And not long after she closed her curtains, she got a call. And on the other end of the phone, the person said, "Just because you close your drapes doesn't mean I don't know you're in there."
Wow.
Yeah.
It's almost like Scream.
It is very much like Scream.
It's very much like Killer Calling from the house.
Yeah,
or
it
maybe
is.
even inside that. It's very much like that.
Yes.
But imagine that. Imagine like the opening scene of Scream where imagine that extended over a period of 7 years.
Right.
Instead of like the opening 3 minutes of a movie.
Right, exactly.
That's what this woman lived through for 7 years.
For 7 years. There started to be knocks on her windows. Her porch lights were being smashed. And she started getting these cut and paste style letters, like ransom letters, coming to her door. They weren't asking for ransom, but they're cut.
Right, they're like cut out of magazines, like letters.
Right. So some threatening letters like that started coming to her. Sometimes it was just saying, "I see you," or just these weird images were on there.
Right.
Sometimes these letters would come via the mail, that postage on them and everything, but sometimes they would arrive without any postage. So someone had just dropped it off themselves.
Right.
There was even a time when one of these letters was on her windshield. It was under her windshield wiper. And it was an image of a woman being pushed, like a dead body being pushed into a morgue.
Ugh.
And
The car is almost freakier.
it's so weird.
Because obviously you don't want anyone in your house, but at least the house you can barricade. Like a car, it's like, God, you might turn the key one morning and the car blows the
Exactly.
fuck up.
Yes.
Or your brakes are cut or something.
Yeah, and I mean, I think women also too are just kind of like very much taught to be afraid of going to or coming from your car.
Right.
I mean, it's like I remember being taught when I was literally like 10 years old, when you come up to your car, like get in and get out fast because someone could be under your car with a knife wanting to cut your Achilles tendons so that you would couldn't walk. So it's just like ingrained in us to like be fucking afraid.
Right.
And the fact that someone did that, knows where her car is and all this shit is very scary. There was also a time that she came back when she was out hanging with a friend. She and her friend came home and her front door was unlocked and ajar, and in her bedroom her pillows were completely slashed and spread all over the place, and a key to her front door was on her bedside table.
Oh my God.
Yes. And one horrifying time, Cindy found 3 dead cats hanging in her garden. There was a threatening note attached to these dead cats as well.
Dead cats.
Yes, very, very sad. These were not her cats. I don't know,
Wish Andrea Perrin was there to whip some ass.
Yes. So in this case, it wasn't her cats. It's just this like very threatening thing, and sees this letter attached. She screams, runs inside, picks up the phone to call the police. The phone lines are cut.
God damn. This is literally like a slasher. It's like
it's
a
slasher.
like a Scream movie.
Yeah, and this was happening in the 80s too. I mean, like slashers.
Oh,
heaven.
this was slasher. Yeah, this was the golden age.
Right. She's expecting to be murdered right then. She's like, this person put these cats in my yard and, to lure me to run inside my house, and now they're going to kill me in my house. But no one was there, and she was unharmed that day. Now, during this time, she had been in touch with the police, and I think she was reporting a good amount of the experiences she was having. I don't know if she was reporting every single thing, but she was reporting some of it, and the police pretty quickly just wrote her off.
Right.
And said that they thought she was making this up. the fact that there was no other witnesses to these things, that this was always happening like when she was alone, and and that they thought she was sending herself these letters and all that stuff. Now, is this possible? Of course. But it is very frustrating that there wasn't a lot of extra work done, to be sure.
Right.
And I understand that budgets are tight and manpower and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, this is your fucking job.
Right.
Like, this is what it's about. Like, you have to, like, look into it a little bit.
Right.
And even during this time, because of her relationship with the police, she met a police officer named Pat McBride. And they started a relationship. And I don't really know what that means necessarily. Like, I don't know if they were like full on, like boyfriend, girlfriend.
Right.
If they were just kind of dating, if it was just kind of a sleeping around situation. I don't really know.
Right.
And I don't know how long it was, but it was at some point during this time. They also said, like, in a couple sources, they said that this police officer, Pat McBride, like, they got close because Pat would come over and sleep in her spare room.
Oh, that's
to like help her. But that is not something the police would do. So like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, that's not like something an on-duty police officer would do.
They might park out front all night.
Exactly, but they're not going to sleep in your house.
Right.
Like, or I mean, they could even be inside of her home.
Right, but they're not going to
they're not going to sleep over. But the police did one time see Roy Makepeace, aka Cindy's ex-husband.
The psychiatrist?
Yes.
Yes.
The police saw him parked right by Cindy's house. And when they approached him, Roy said that he was just keeping an eye on Cindy, but he did admit that Cindy did not know he was there.
Interesting.
A little suspicious that he's
Right.
just kind of staking out her house, basically.
Also, maybe tell her if you're going to.
Right.
Like, watch out for her.
It's like she's not your wife anymore.
Right.
So I think that is weird. Like, I could see that maybe he's just like, even though they're divorced, like, she was his wife for a long time and he doesn't
Right.
want her to, be hurt. So, I could see that maybe he wanted to just do a little extra work and maybe even just so he himself felt like he was doing
Good
something.
point.
Regardless, I think it's a little
It's weird.
suspicious.
It's weird.
Now, over the course of these 7 years, Cindy was attacked many times, at least 5 times. And right here is one of the big ones. On January 27th, 1983, Cindy's friend Agnes Woodcock showed up at Cindy's house just to check in and say hi. She knocked on the door and there was no answer, but she didn't really think that much of it because Cindy took baths every night. So she just thought maybe she's up in the bath and can't hear me knocking. Whatever.
Right.
So she just walked around back. I don't know if she was going to maybe go in through a back door, or I don't know exactly what her friend Agnes was doing, but she went around back and she saw Cindy cowering on the ground.
Like behind the house, right?
Yeah,
like almost like she was hiding from someone.
Like she was hiding, yeah. Cindy had some bruises, and she also had a black nylon stocking tied around her neck, as if someone was trying to strangle her. Cindy was very shaken up, but when she got herself together and she realized it was Agnes, her friend, that had come around back, she told her that she went outside to the garage to get something, and that while she was walking to the garage, someone came up from behind her and started to strangle her, but that the only thing Cindy could really see was just that this person was wearing white sneakers.
Right.
And Cindy confided in her friend Agnes a lot and talked to her, and as well as her family as well.
Right.
Saying how horrified she was and how terrifying this really was for her. And her friend Agnes said, "She told me many times that he wanted to scare her to death. She said, he doesn't want to kill me. He wants to scare me to death."
She knew that this person wanted her dead, but
Yeah.
didn't want to kill her. They literally, it felt as though they wanted to
Yeah.
scare her to death.
They're just tormenting her in the weirdest, scariest ways.
Because think about it. Why didn't they just kill her then?
Right.
Like, if there was no one else around, and you're going to notice that a lot in this story, where you wonder if they were going to do it, why didn't they?
Why haven't they done it? Yeah, exactly. It's very weird. It shows you that there's maybe some other kind of motive or something. It's I
Exactly.
don't know what. It just, a lot of it doesn't really make a ton of sense. Now, what was hard was sometimes the police department would put 24-hour surveillance on her house, and they, had extra police activity and all that stuff.
Right.
And every time that would happen, She wouldn't receive any calls. No one would attack her. Like, nothing happened when the police surveillance was there. However, as soon as the police were released and they weren't there anymore, something would start happening again.
Right.
The police took that as proof that she was doing this herself.
Right.
What other explanation could it be?
Right.
Whereas her family was like, maybe this person could tell that there was police surveillance on the house because it's not like a secret. You can see. They knew not to do anything. Or maybe this person had an in with the police department.
And we know she was dating.
Right. Or maybe was a police officer.
Right.
Maybe this is Pat McBride. You know, so it's like, maybe it's not just cut and dry, like, but it's only happening when the police aren't here. It's clearly fake. It's like, I don't think that it means something weird is going on. I don't know.
Right.
So Cindy did so many different things to try and help this. She moved, she changed her last name, she painted her car, she made sure her phone number was unlisted, and she hired a private investigator named Ozzy Caban. Ozzy Caban installed some extra lighting around the outside of her house.
Right.
He also put in a two-way radio between her house and his.
Oh, that's
so
right.
I
forgot about that.
Right, because, you know, like the phone lines kept getting cut and stuff, and so he would be able to know what's going on there. And he also installed a panic button. So once again, because the phone lines get cut, she could just hit that button and then it, you know, essentially calls 911.
Right.
Now, Ozzy believed her that she really was going through all of this, and so did her parents. However, they could tell, her parents and Ozzy and her friends too, could tell that she wasn't giving all of the information. Like, that there was something else going on. And not just because this was weird and it didn't really make a ton of sense. It was like she herself was acting strange, like she was holding things back. And she was kind of open about it, too, that she wasn't sharing the whole story.
Which is weird.
Very weird.
Which I find that almost weirder. It's not even so much that she's withholding information. It's that she's acknowledging she is.
Right. She like is yeah, it's so weird. Like, we could make this stop.
Exactly.
Maybe.
You're right.
And it was frustrating, and Ozzy Caban actually said the following.
She wouldn't tell them the entire story. She would be evasive, she would withhold information, and she would simply not act as a normal victim would act. And I could see where a police officer would have a tremendous amount of trouble believing her story.
And it did turn out that Cindy said that during some of these attacks that the people said, or whoever said to her, like, if you say anything, we're going to kill your mother and then your sister.
Jesus.
So she did have some reason to fear telling her whole story. And she was willing to be questioned under a lot of different circumstances. She did have a polygraph test, but unfortunately it came through that she was either withholding information or she was too traumatized to really get a good read. This doesn't mean that she lied. It means that monitors your heart rate, your, you know, all these different things. And it's just, she was just in such a state of stress that they couldn't get a good read off of it. Also, polygraph tests aren't the most, it's not like that is a hard and fast rule that, like, whatever the polygraph says is the truth. So you do got to take it with a grain of salt anyway. And then it is interesting. It didn't come up that she was lying, just that she was really stressed.
Exactly.
She also was hypnotized by her own therapist to try and get through some of this stuff, and she was even super traumatized to the point where that wasn't even really working.
Makes me wonder how many people on Maury were told they didn't pass the polygraph when actually they did.
I know, right? And I guess Maury actually did an episode about this on Cindy James.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So on January 30th, 1984, late one night, Ozzy, Cindy's private investigator, could hear some weird noises, some like tuffling and scuffling around on the two-way radio, and rushed over to Cindy's house. He found her laying on the floor with a knife in her hand, securing a note saying, "You are dead, bitch."
A knife pierced through her hand.
She was laying on the ground, unconscious. Ozzy thought she was dead, with a note pierced through her hand with a paring knife that said, "You are dead, bitch."
That's like pirate shit.
Yes.
That's like something you would expect like a pirate to do.
A fucking
like
pirate.
They pin your hand to the
fucking poop deck for
with a
Christ's
knife,
sakes.
you know, with a note on. Like that, it literally sounds like something out of like The Godfather or like a pirate movie or some shit.
So Ozzy thinks she's dead. He checks her pulse. He feels a pulse. calls 911, and they arrive, and she shortly thereafter kind of comes to, and she said that she doesn't really remember, much from this encounter, but she does remember feeling like she got like stabbed in the arm, like with a needle.
Jeez.
Not with like a knife, but with a needle, and there was a small needle mark above her elbow.
Like on the back of her hand?
On the back of her elbow.
Oh, like on her act. Oh, interesting.
So it seemed like appeared as though she was drugged, and then this knife was put through her hand. The police once again thought that Cindy did this to herself, that she was doing this for attention. And this didn't actually really happen. She did it to herself.
Jesus.
Ozzy thinks that she didn't do it to herself because he doesn't think she would be able to stab herself with the angle that the needle went in.
Right.
She couldn't, do that by herself.
Especially the back. Yeah, that's weird. Right,
Yeah.
right.
But the police were so sure that she did this herself that they didn't do any kind of forensic work.
Wow.
There wasn't a ton, at the time. It was the 80s, but, they didn't take any fingerprints. They didn't do anything. So the police really were sure this is nothing, whereas her private investigator really thought that someone attacked her.
Well, and it makes you wonder, the note says, "You're dead, bitch." It's like, well, you could have done it there.
Then, yeah, it's like they're just doing it to traumatize her, to fuck with her mind, to let her know that she's never safe and she can never fully rest.
I get it. It's like you literally had a knife on you.
Right, yeah, you could have
put
just
it through her hand.
fucking done it.
It's
right.
weird.
It's very weird. And it's like, was someone doing this to her that hated her, and they were doing it because they knew that they would get no/less jail time than if they actually murdered her? I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know. And the police never ever did any kind of questioning or investigation or interrogation or anything of Pat McBride, the
That's
police officer
insane.
boyfriend. Nothing, ever.
Insanity.
They just didn't do anything. The next big attack was on September 11th, 1985. Cindy was found in a ditch 6 miles from her home, dying of hypothermia.
Jesus.
She was just wearing a man's work boot and glove and had another one of these black nylons tied around her neck. She had a black eye and numerous cuts and bruises all over her whole body.
One man's work boot? She doesn't even have two men's work boots on?
It's like, what is
She's
this?
got one and then a black glove on? Like
Right.
on one hand, I assume.
Yeah, and she's just like in some ditch 6 or 7 miles away from her house. And so, yeah, this left her hospitalized. Like
Jesus.
hypothermia is a really big deal. Sometimes, especially after this attack, Cindy would have her friend Agnes Woodcock and Agnes's husband Tom come over and spend the night with her at her house. These were good friends of hers, and they were more than happy to do that to help out
Right.
in whatever way they can.
Well, at least now she's got a couple people in the house, too.
Right.
More than just one.
Just one. It's like, it's better, it's like you got your friend and your friend's husband. It's just like feels a little better. Late one night, they all kind of heard some like shuffling around, and Cindy went to Tom and Agnes's room where they were sleeping, and she was like, "Did you guys hear that?" And they were like, "Yeah, we heard that too. What's going on?" They go downstairs, they go open the basement door, and the basement is on fire.
The basement.
The basement is a fucking blaze.
What?
Yes. So of course they're like, huh? What? Huh? So Tom, he picks up the phone, calls 911. Except, wait a minute, he fucking can't. The phone lines are cut.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yep.
The phone. Oh.
The phone lines are cut again. So they go outside to go to a neighbor's house to call 911. And while Tom was going outside, he saw a man standing outside by the curb. And when Tom was like, hey, like there's a fire, I could help, call 911, he just ran off in the other direction.
That's weird.
Yep. And so then Tom did go to a neighbor. They called 911, and the fire department, the police department came, put the fire out. I don't think there was, thankfully, any serious damage. I don't think the house was destroyed or anything. But the police deduced that there was only one way that you could get into the basement, other than like the front door, which was locked. That was this one window. And they saw that the window had not been opened, and that the dust on the outside of the window had not been disturbed. So they said, there's no way that anyone else could have done this. This is arson. And Cindy did it. And Cindy said she couldn't have done it because she went out to walk her dog, like right before this happened. That is suspicious, I'll be honest. It is like 3 a.m.
Okay.
You're going through all of this stuff. Why would you go out and walk your dog?
At 3 a.m. Even if you had your dog.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was going to say. With your dog, I get it a little more because you feel a little safer with your dog. It is weird, but at the same time, it is kind of a major thing to set fire to your own fucking basement. So I don't know, but it is very
that's
strange. So at this point, I mean this whole time, but especially at this point, Cindy is in a real bad way. She is incredibly depressed, incredibly anxious, and she is suicidal at this point. Her family's really worried about her. They can just see this, like, she's always had this spark and this energy, and it's gone. You can tell she's just so frayed and at the end of her rope and just really struggling. And her psychotherapist, Alan Connolly, actually said the following.
I think one of the things she found most difficult was that people didn't believe her. She was always doubted. She knew she was doubted, and that was what slowly drove her crazy. The fact was that she wasn't believed.
So, at the suggestion of her therapist, Dr. Alan Connolly, Cindy goes to an inpatient psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
And she stays there for 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
So yes, this is a substantial amount of time.
Wow, okay.
She really was going through it. You know, it's hard to know exactly what happened in there, and you know, we can't get all of the information.
Right.
But as far as I know, as far as the reliable sources I have been able to find, was that she was not diagnosed with anything other than, you know, depression and anxiety while she was in there. So after 10 weeks, she does come home.
Okay.
And after that, she confesses fully to her family that she is withholding information, that there is something going on, but that she just can't explain it all right now. You know, and she said, like, to one of her friends, Agnes, she said, you know, once this is all over, I'll be able to explain everything.
Right.
But then she also told her parents, like, you know, if the police aren't going to solve this, then I'm going to solve it for them. So it's like, I don't really know what it is. Maybe she meant just like, I'm going to catch them and find a way that they can be convicted or charged with this crime. Or maybe she still didn't really know who it was. I don't really know. But Cindy and some other people as well thought that maybe Dr. Roy Makepeace himself was doing this to her ex-husband, which kind of makes sense because it's almost always, you know, your husband or an ex or a boyfriend or your ex or whatever, pretty much always. So the police did contact Dr. Roy Makepeace, but he vehemently denied this and said that there's no way it could have been him because he was also receiving some threatening calls as well.
That's right.
And here we are going to play a portion of a recorded voicemail Dr. Roy Makepeace said he received.
Whoa.
Yas. So that said, Cindy dead meet soon.
It sounds like a woman's voice.
Yes, I think it sounds like a woman either pretending to be a man or just trying to like make her voice spooky in general.
Okay.
Which is weird.
It's unsettling. It's an unsettling
It's
sound.
unsettling, but it's also kind of like, what the fuck? Why are they using this like weird voice? But also it's like, I guess you would want to disguise your voice, I guess, if you were doing this. So I don't know. But what Dr. Roy Makepeace said, what he believed was happening was that Cindy was actually doing all of this to herself. However, she wasn't doing it all to herself like the way the police was saying it, that she was just doing this for attention or whatever. Which, by the way, is so fucking stupid. It's like, why would this woman do all of that just for attention? And if she did do all of that just for attention, then you need to help her get medical help. Like, that is also your fucking job, is to handle this situation instead of continuing to fucking just waste time and money and manpower with all of these surveillances and responding to these 911 calls that, according to them, they don't think is fucking real. Right. So it's like, then why don't you fucking help her? Right. So that drives me fucking crazy. But Dr. Roy Makepeace, he was saying that Cindy had multiple personalities, aka DID, which is what it's known as now, which is dissociative identity disorder. More commonly known or used to be known as multiple personalities disorder. Basically, he was saying that this was one personality coming forward that was more vicious and violent and attacking Cindy, like that personality that we know.
Right, and trying literally to destroy Cindy.
Exactly, trying to destroy Cindy, and that Cindy herself didn't even know. Like, it's not like she
Right.
had any kind of inclination, like, is this me? Like, what's going on? That she fully isn't aware that there are two personalities
Right.
at all. So that's what he says. And he's like, I'm a psychiatrist. Like, I know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And the police are all like, that's actually a really good point. You're a psychiatrist. That's cool.
Interesting. Okay.
However, she was not his patient.
Right.
He never saw her in a professional setting of that kind. Especially he hadn't talked to her, about all of that in depth
Right.
for
right.
a long time. Also, DID is pretty rare. It usually comes from a significant trauma in your life, which she could have had, and we don't know much about her childhood, so
Right.
we don't know. It is possible, but she was in that psychiatric hospital for 10 weeks, and as far as we know, she was never diagnosed with that.
Right.
And her own therapist doesn't think she had that.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's frustrating that the police and many others just kind of immediately accepted that.
Right.
Because this man was like, her ex-husband and a psychiatrist, like, he must really know what he's talking about. And it's like, he's not her fucking doctor, though.
Right.
It's like, maybe, but like, let's listen to what her actual fucking therapist is
Absolutely.
saying. It's just very fucking annoying.
Because he also divorced her, which means he might not always have her best interest at heart either.
Right. She didn't like being married to him near
Right.
the end, at least. So it's like, do we not think that this man might have some ulterior motives for saying that she is mentally ill?
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot, actually. So it's like frustrating that they never really did further research into this other than just her ex-husband diagnosing her without
Right.
improperly diagnosing her.
Right.
Now, on May 25th, 1989, Cindy went to a local mall to do some grocery shopping, deposit a check, and just do some errands. And unfortunately, she never made it home from that trip. Her car was found the day she went missing, and there was blood on the driver's side door. Items from her wallet were strewn around the car. Nothing was stolen. And there was also groceries and a wrapped gift in the car.
So she had just gotten groceries and a gift for somebody.
Right. So it seems like she was anticipating living the rest of the day.
Right.
Is it possible that she was doing this to kind of get the scent off her trail? Possibly.
Sure.
However, this is weird.
It seems strange.
And according to Reddit, this area, where this strip mall or whatever, was a very busy area. There was a
Right.
lot of foot traffic and traffic, stuff going on. So people would have seen if there was some kind of struggle there.
Right.
Something going on. And for the next 2 weeks, no one heard anything. No one saw her. There was no information coming in. Nothing. Except one day, 2 weeks after she went missing, her body was found in the yard of an abandoned house. Her body had multiple wounds, including an injection mark on her arm.
Wow.
And she was hogtied with her hands and legs bound behind her back, which this was not the first time that this has happened to her.
That's right. That second time she was found.
She had been found hogtied a couple other times.
Which,
and
in case you don't know hogtie, I'm sure
yeah.
most of you do, it's when like both your feet and your hands are tied behind your back. A lot of times, I think all four of them almost like
together too, right?
Ugh.
So it's just you can't do anything.
Yeah.
And there was the black nylon stocking tied around her neck as well. Not just tied, not like a fucking necklace. Like it was being used to strangle her.
Right.
Now, where she was found was another kind of high traffic area. It was an abandoned house, to be fair. It wasn't like someone was living in this house. However, this was a house that was like notorious for parties, just
Okay.
like teens or the youth, I guess.
Okay.
So the fact that they just found her body 2 weeks after the fact, no one had seen her at any of these like parties,
Right.
just like laying there, that would make you think that her body was moved there, right?
Right.
Or maybe she died more recently. Maybe she was just killed the day before or something.
Right.
According to the coroner, it looks like she died the day she went missing. It looks like she had been dead for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
So how did she get there? In my mind, it makes me think that she was put there after the fact.
Absolutely.
During the autopsy, they did see that her actual cause of death wasn't strangulation like it maybe looked like when they first found her body.
Right.
It was actually a huge overdose of morphine.
Right.
And that went along with the needle mark that was in her arm.
Right.
So the police said that this was a cut and dry suicide. they said that either she was, once again, doing this for attention. This is like the greatest attention-getting thing you could do. Kind of like, no one was listening to me all this time, so I'm going to kill myself now. And you guys are going to see, like, shame on you for not believing me when I was lying. You know, they think she's just like weird woman. Or they think maybe she was so depressed or whatever, and this is how she killed herself. But it's like, why would she kill herself that way? That's so weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially like in the Unsolved Mysteries episode, her mom goes into like how she thinks her daughter would have committed suicide, which is like so weird. But it's true though. It's like she did seem to have at least like somewhat good relationship with her family. Like it's just like a very weird, very violent thing to do to yourself.
Absolutely.
I forgot to say that the needle though, because they said that she did die of a morphine overdose and she did have this needle mark on her arm. Everyone's like, okay, so where's the needle then? Like they couldn't find the needle or the syringe anywhere near her body. So they were like, this is what she must have done. She must have injected herself and then walked the however long it was from where she injected herself and she disposed of the needle, then went to this location, hog-tied herself, and just waited to die.
And then didn't get seen for 2 weeks.
And then didn't get seen for 2 weeks in this high traffic area where teens are out here acting crazy.
And she's in the front lawn.
Right. It's not like hidden under some bushes somewhere.
Exactly.
It's like in the front fucking lawn.
Clearly her body was held somewhere for a while and then they just left it there.
I mean, that's what it seems like to me. Also, she was not wearing shoes when she died. So she walked barefoot from wherever she was after injecting herself with morphine before it had a chance to kick in because they were under the impression that it would like take 15 minutes. So she had 15 minutes.
Right.
I don't know if that's true or
not.
not.
Didn't you say her feet were clean?
Yes.
So she didn't walk there.
Yeah, the bottom of her feet weren't like fucked up or dirty. So it's like, so what is it? Like,
that's bizarre.
Now, there's a reporter from the Vancouver Sun named Neil Hall, and he was covering the case, you know, at the time when this was all going on. And he was quoted saying this.
The morphine wouldn't have taken effect for, say, 15 minutes to half an hour. The knot specialist who came in and recreated the same type of knots and the way she was tied up, it took him 3 minutes.
Right, but he's a fucking knot specialist.
He's a knot specialist.
He's a knot specialist who did it without being on fucking morphine and after walking barefoot for a while.
And we're assuming she hog-tied herself.
So they're saying it's possible, like, oh, this guy did it in 3 minutes. It's like, okay, just because someone can do it in 3 minutes, Usain Bolt can run really fucking fast, but you know who can't run fast? Fucking me. So like, this doesn't make any sense. Okay,
it's so bizarre.
So it's like, it drives me crazy. It's just weird. And I do understand that the circumstances around her death and her life, really, this whole thing is
So
weird.
tragic, yeah.
I'm not saying that it's like clearly murder. Like, I'm not saying like it's obviously Roy or it's obviously Pat or it's obviously whatever. It's like, this clearly is weird, but like, it's not like this cut and dry suicide in my opinion either. Like, I think it's weird too. So the coroner said that the cause of death was morphine, but the actual like cause was listed as an unknown event. It was not listed as a suicide like the police think that it was, because I think the coroner realized that this is very strange and that it's not, we can't be or at least at the time couldn't be sure exactly what did happen.
That's so bizarre.
So unfortunately, the police really just stuck with the fact that it was a suicide and not a lot of investigation was done. But her family and Ozzy Caban, the private investigator, they all thought for sure that she was being attacked and she wasn't doing this to herself. And both of her parents have passed now, but up until the day that they died, they thought she was attacked and she was murdered. So her sister also believed that Cindy was murdered, and I think it's worth kind of going into theories about it. Yeah. So the first theory we already kind of touched on is this DID, dissociative identity disorder, which the definition is, just to make it clear, a mental disorder characterized by maintenance of at least 2 distinct and relatively enduring personality traits.
Okay.
So we touched on that. That is possible. Now, another possibility is maybe she had Munchausen syndrome,
Right.
Munchausen means a disorder where those affected feign disease, illness, or psychological trauma to draw attention, sympathy, or reassurance to themselves. What this means is, like, I think the more well-known of this is Munchausen by proxy, which is like the act on Hulu, which is Mommy Dead and Dearest / the like Gypsy Rose case, or Misha Barton in The Sixth Sense for a real throwback there, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, basically where it's like you're doing it to someone else. Like you're slowly poisoning your child or your parent or whatever so that you get attention through, your ailing person. Whereas this is, you're doing it to yourself.
Right.
So in this case, it would be she was doing it to herself and she was completely aware that she was doing this to herself. However, it was a mental illness. So yeah, those are kind of two kind of opposite sides of the spectrum there with Munchausen and DID. Her doing it herself, fully aware, and her doing it herself without being aware.
Right.
Of course, it's possible that maybe it was Dr. Roy Makepeace or her boyfriend Pat McBride or both of them. It's totally possible. Another theory is that maybe after Cindy got divorced, that she started dating a woman. And this is the 80s. Obviously, homosexual relationships are not as widely accepted as they are today, especially with the AIDS crisis and everything going on at the time. So they thought that maybe she was in a relationship with a woman and then the relationship fell through, they broke up, and this woman was the one stalking her, attacking her, doing all of these things.
That would explain why a woman's voice, why it sounded like a woman's voice on the phone.
And maybe that explains why she didn't feel like she could tell her family and friends what really was going on. Like she couldn't say, I know who this person is and they're not just a stranger, like we intimately know each other very well.
Right.
And maybe she wasn't ready to say that, and maybe that's why she was like, I'll tell you, when I can. But that's just another theory. I mean, I don't know.
At the end of the day, it's just so tragic. Like,
it's so tragic.
Horrible. This woman suffered for 7 years, whether it was at her own hand or not.
Right, exactly. She clearly was miserable for these 7 years, and like all those around her could tell. And I mean, I also think it's worth noting that it is statistically much more likely that someone will be stalked than someone will pretend to be stalked. People don't really make false accusations like that as often as maybe others would like us to think. Of course, there are people that make false accusations and false claims. Of course, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. However, it's not like that's the exception, not the rule.
Right.
So it's very frustrating that she was not taken seriously. And it's very evident to me that she was just thought as like a hysterical woman.
Right.
That no one really took her seriously.
Right.
And like we said before, like even if she was doing this to herself, the government of Vancouver failed her.
Yeah.
Like she needed assistance and she was reaching out for help.
Right.
Or she wasn't doing it to herself and she was also needed assistance because an outside party was doing this to her.
Right.
And so either way, the city of Vancouver failed her, unfortunately.
Funny that Blair Adams' story, he was from Vancouver.
Very interesting.
These mysterious deaths, like they're running from someone. And
yeah. And this case reminded me of that episode of ours. Also the Watcher House.
Right,
Circleville Rider. Very weird. But please let us know what you guys think. What are your thoughts, your theories? Or maybe you guys have some more information that we don't have. We would love to hear it. So please DM us wherever you can, or email us directly at creepstreetpodcast@gmail.com. Well,
that is going to wrap it up for Something Follows Cindy James. Maureen, thank you for all of that hard work and research.
Oh my God, it's literally my pleasure.
And of course, we were going to save the best for last.
Yes.
Let me read to you the names of our top tier Patreon subscribers. We got a new one, gang.
Oh!
Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face Via Lungfist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bone Breaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lash Matt, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, and the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey.
Kevin Bogey?
That's right.
Oh my god, that's such a common name. There's no way that's my biological brother.
No way at all.
There's no way. It's just impossible.
So
But thank you for joining, Kevin. You're welcome to the squad.
Yes, absolutely. And everybody, of course, like, rate, subscribe, share with your friends, family, evangelize
thank
the
you.
good word of Creep Street.
Yes, it helps us so much, and it just makes us smile in a nice way.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.